Welcome to the Stopping to Think podcast. I'm your host, Will Dole. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy, you can rate and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. If you're on Substack, feel free to review, that's not the right word, subscribe, like, comment, any of that sort of thing. Two book reviews today. The first is Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. This is the second time I've read Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. I've read some of his other books as well, but this one I first picked up after being introduced to the infinite banking concept that he lays out here by a financial planner. Nelson's work is deeply counterintuitive, especially if your intuition is Dave Ramsey inflected. The conventional wisdom on life insurance is to buy as much as you can for as cheap as you can and then invest your extra money that you would have spent on a more expensive whole or universal or any other kind of policy. And for that strategy, term life's really the only option. It's the only way to go. But in this book, Nash advocates strongly for cash value permanent insurance, i.e., whole life insurance. And his argument centers around the idea that your need for finance is far greater over the course of your life than the need for life insurance. And purchasing a relatively small whole life policy and then overfunding it with the overpayments going to paid up riders allows you to basically use it as a turbocharged savings account, creating a pool of your own money, which you can access at any time through policy loans and use that to be the capital base that you work from. You, in essence, then become your own bank. So you need a car, don't pay cash, but also don't take out a bank loan. Take a loan against your policy, and then here comes the key to his plan here. You pay it back to your policy at market interest. And the way a whole life policy works is that money that you take out in a loan, you're taking a loan from the life insurance company against that cash value, but the cash value actually stays in the market at work. You're still earning interest on that even while you have it out as a loan. So then you pay it back with interest, and you're again overfunding into your own capital base that you're building there. So his argument here is by doing this, you capture the profit of financing rather than the finance company doing so. And you multiply this by a number of cars over the course of your life, maybe even your house, and et cetera, et cetera. You are now capturing all of that profit that you would have been paying to a middleman. Honestly, I find his concept pretty compelling. I mean, the math's hard to argue with. Half the book is spreadsheets. I think when you look at his critics online, most of them haven't really digested what he's saying. But this is clear. Like, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Requires a lot of capitalization on the front end, building these policies up. It's clearly meant to be a long-term strategy, which is part of why I found it convincing. Proverbs 13:11 warns against trying to get rich quick, but those who build up little by little, I think, are rewarded. And I think that's the idea that he's getting at here with perhaps a culturally unusual mechanism of whole life policies. So that's Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. Second book I finished recently was Devoured by Cannabis by Douglas Wilson. I read and or listen to quite a few Wilson books, and this one I listened to an audio version read by Wade Stotts. In this book, Wilson offers a clear, succinct argument as to why cannabis use is categorically different from alcohol use, also different from, say, smoking cigarettes, but will lean more into the difference between it and alcohol, and why our society, he discusses why our society should treat the two substances differently. Now, what Wilson's arguing for really is pretty obvious from a biblical point of view. The number one use for recreational pot, mind distortion and alteration, is the only use of alcohol that's prohibited in Scripture. In other words, drunkenness. Therefore, marijuana is biblically off limits. Don't become so captured by a substance that it's altering your ability to think and clearly reason. Well, that's the whole point of consuming marijuana. He makes short work of favorite stoner verses. Every green herb means eat your salad, not smoke a joint. The most carefully reasoned part of this book, and I found it useful for strengthening my own thought process because I've kind of spent a lot of time thinking about the differences between marijuana, alcohol, marijuana smoking, etc. But this was helpful for me was his case as to why society has a right to protect itself from the likely effects of drug use. And again, it's analogous to drunkenness. Do drunk drivers make it home safely most of the time? Sure, they do. But they're still far more likely than a sober driver to harm themselves and others. So we censure that behavior. Why? Because society has a right, a collective responsibility even, to prohibit that kind of risk taking. Likewise, THC alters the minds of its users, especially the young, in a way that increases the likelihood of mental health problems, makes it more difficult to regulate your emotions in socially healthy ways, and to return to our drunkenness comparison, impairs motor ability. One of the numbers he cites in there, I mean, his book's from 2021, it's probably higher now, but at that point, over 12% of highway fatalities were due to THC impaired driving. These risks are borne by society as a whole, not merely the individual consumer. And this reality means that as weed laws liberalize, we should not see that as an expansion of freedom, but of bondage and, frankly, societal disintegration. And I'll tag on here at the end, someone needs to write a similar book for mobile gambling. So, this has been the Stop and Think podcast. I'm your host, Will Dole. Thanks for listening.